Hi everyone, today we'll be looking at the paper LIMA, Less is More for Alignment. Typically language models are trained in two stages. The first stage is unsupervised pre-training, where you train your language model on large corpora, and the language model learns basic semantics from this raw text. And the second stage is doing fine tuning and reinforcement learning. And this is so that the language model generates outputs which are better aligned to the preferences of the user. In this paper, they study the importance of both these stages on a 65 billion parameter LAMA model. And they call their method as LIMA, which is less is more for alignment. Typically for alignment, you can either use instruction fine tuning, where you have a pre-trained model and you fine-tune this model on prompts and responses, right? And the other method in which you can achieve alignment is by reinforcement learning with human feedback. And this is expensive, right? So in this paper, their hypothesis is that the most of the capabilities of the language model are already acquired during pre-training. And when you do alignment, you're basically doing some sort of very superficial training where you teach the model how to pick a particular distribution format so that the output is more in line with what the user expects, right? And to achieve this, they fine tune their model, which is already pre-trained, on just 1,000 prompts and responses, right? But they take great care in creating these prompts and responses, and they show that they do achieve comparable performance with their model, which has just been fine tuned on 1,000 examples. So the prompts which they curate, that is these 1,000 examples, they come from Stack Exchange, where you have these STEM exchanges consisting of programming, math, etc., and also other exchanges such as English, cooking, etc. They also have prompts and responses from WikiHow, where typically you have a response for how to do a particular thing. Um, and then they also have prompts from writing prompts where users are asked to complete stories from Reddit, right? They also have another, for their testing, they also use another subreddit called Ask Reddit. And they do have prompts from natural instructions. And the authors of the paper also craft some prompts, both in the training, dev, and test set. So the breakdown of the number of examples from each data set is shown here, and their average input length and output length is shown here. So they start off with a 65 billion pre-trained llama model, and they just use these 1,000 examples for fine-tuning. And most of the responses of these prompts are stylistically similar, in so that they all follow the same sort of, they all generate the same sort of output, which a helpful AI assistant would generate. And they train their llama model on these examples for 15 epochs with an Adam W optimizer. And the in terms of evaluation, they try to do both human evaluation as well as evaluation with GPT-4. So we'll probably take a look at their results. You can see that they compare their model with certain baselines. And so these responses are sort of a human or GPT-4 rating which response they would prefer. So they would have one response from their LIMA model and one response from Alpaca 65B, and they would have a human annotator in this case to select either one of the responses as preferred. And in this case, they would have GPT-4 basically telling which response it prefers. So the Alpaca 65B model is the 65 billion llama model, but it has been fine-tuned on the 52,000 examples used by Alpaca. And you can see that 53% of the time, human annotators preferred the responses given by LIMA compared to the Alpaca model, the 65 billion model, which was fine-tuned on the fine-tuning examples used in Alpaca. And you see a similar trend with GPT-4 as well, right? So they are just using the Lima model is just using 1,000 prompts, whereas Alpaca is using 52,000 prompts. So you can immediately see that using a lot of examples for fine tuning is not really that important. And then they also compare their model with DaVinci, which uses reinforcement learning with human feedback, and they find that 44% of the time and 54% of the time, Lima is preferred over DaVinci. And then basically the tie is when you don't really have a preference one way or the other with either the Lima model or the baseline models. They also compare their models with Bard, Claude, and GPT-4, and you can see that Lima is preferred 33%, 24%, and 18% of the time, right? Not as much as Alpaca and DaVinci. And so this basically says that even with around 1,000 examples, you can achieve some sort of alignment, um, and you don't really need a lot of examples as used in Alpaca. And they also manually look at their prompts. They sample 15 random examples and they look at the prompts and they find that and they categorize these prompts as either excellent, meaning to say that the prompts meet the requirements of what a good prompt is and it is a good response to the prompt. Pass, where it just meets the requirements of a prompt, what a good prompt is, and also fail, where the model does not meet the requirements of the prompt at all, right? And they find that Lima generates good responses 50% of the time. And then they do ablations on what is important in these 1,000 examples, right? Whether it's the diversity, quality, or the quantity. So to control and for this they use a 7 billion parameter llama model, and they basically take the response and ask ChatGPT to grade the helpfulness of this response on a 1 to 6 Likert scale, right? So for diversity, they basically look at two data sets. So they have their base 7 billion model and they fine tune it on only WikiHow and look at how ChatGPT rates the generation quality, as well as they also fine tune it only on Stack Exchange, and they have filtered Stack Exchange because WikiHow responses are typically moderated and they have good quality responses, whereas Stack Exchange, not all responses are good quality responses. So they do take care to filter the responses so that only good quality ones are retained during the training for a direct head-to-head comparison. And they find that since Stack Exchange has more diverse data, having diversity in your data basically improves your generation quality. And the other ablation they perform is on the quality. So they basically look at the Stack Exchange data. They take their 7 billion model and fine tune it on the filtered version of Stack Exchange and the unfiltered version, and they see that controlling for quality basically improves the generation quality. The next experiment they do is by varying the number of training examples, right, from 2K to 32K. And they basically see that the generation quality does not necessarily improve a whole lot, which is by just scaling the number of training examples. And you can see that it almost plateaus here, right? Although you increase it 16-fold. So just scaling the number of examples is not important. You probably also need to control for the diversity of the data, as well as you need to control for whether it is good quality data, or you're just taking data without any further filtration, right? And then they also perform evaluation on multi-turn dialogue, right? So they perform two types of evaluation. One is zero shot and the other is dialogue fine tune. So for zero shot, you have prompts and responses. Two different prompts are not related in any way. Whereas when you look at multi-turn data, and they evaluate it on multi-turn data, which is something like this, right? Where you have like one prompt, and then you have a response, and the next prompt sort of relates to the previous prompt in a way. And they see that zero shot, even without any sort of fine tuning on this kind of data, you achieve 45.2% excellent responses. Whereas if you fine tune on this kind of, I think they fine tune on just 30 examples, right? They have the 1,000 examples from before, and they have an additional 30 examples of multi-turn dialogue. You do see an increase in the quality of responses. So basically, this paper shows that the pre-training imparts most of the knowledge in these language models, and fine-tuning is only a, a superficial step where you can align the response of the model by fine-tuning on just 1,000 examples, provided these 1,000 examples are very carefully curated. And just with this, you can achieve good performance, and you can improve the content which is generated by these models. And also, you don't really require reinforcement learning from human feedback, which is pretty expensive to align your language model's output. Something as simple as fine tuning with carefully curated examples also can lead to similar results.